Hey everyone, welcome back to Autonomy Farms, and today we're going to be getting into a new video. And before we get into the video, please go on and click the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's go on and get into the video. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Wildwoods Beekeeping podcast, another live stream. Thank you all so much for joining in tonight if you're watching live, but if you're watching on the replay, thank you for joining in too. I greatly appreciate it. So today's topic, as you can see on the title, on the thumbnail, the reason why you clicked on this video, this live stream, if you're watching live or if you're watching on the replay, we're going to be kind of talking, I'm going to be talking about some things newer beekeepers worry about too much. Also, by the way, whenever we do get into this in just a second, so if you're watching on the replay, I will put in the comments, just go back into the comments and look, and I'll put the time if you wanted to jump straight into the presentation, and you can click on that timestamp and it'll take you right to the presentation, so you don't have to stay here and listen to me talk for about 5 minutes. So thank you all so much for joining in. We'll give some time for people to join in, and then we'll get straight into the presentation. So I guess these things that newer beekeepers worry about too much is going to be kind of guided for everything, not like just a specific season, like, it's all seasons: winter, spring, fall, summer, just be kind of talking about some things newer beekeepers kind of overthink and worry about a little bit too much. And the thing is, I think Gary mentioned something up here just a second ago. I was going to kind of he brought it up right at the start. 540 said no need to worry at this point here. There is nothing anyone can do anyway. If there's an issue, all we can do is keep them fed and hope for the best. And I think that's he brought up a really good point, because I kind of talked about that a couple days ago. That right now there's not a whole lot I can do. I can feed them, and that's about it. And if there's other issues like queen issues, if there's other issues that especially queen issues, I can't really do anything about that right now, and you can't really do anything about that, so he made a good point there, and that's we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. So if y'all will, whenever you're joining in, make sure to click that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I greatly appreciate it. Hope everybody had a great Happy New Year, because I didn't do my live stream on the 29th, so didn't really. This live stream is kind of after New Year, so just want to wish everybody Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a great Happy New Year with their family and friends. Looking forward to this year, 2026. Just still kind of getting used to saying 2026. Is so used every year whenever we change years. Always so used to the old year. So just getting right into that little spot to get used to the new year, because whenever I was doing my my email newsletter, I was kind of typing it out. I almost sent it saying January 5th, 2025. So I've done that every year. So I had to, right when I saw it, I got to switch it back to 2026. So I guess we'll go ahead and name out some people who already joined. So I appreciate y'all joining. We got Gary, RT23B, thanks for checking in. Russell Amon 312, thanks for checking in. Keith Spillman from North Carolina, Half Tracks and Honeybees, thanks for checking in, Keith. Appreciate it. Mike Tangway, thanks for checking in, Mike. Greatly appreciate it. Tim and Hannah, Richard, Bee Collector Rick, Hallelujah Bee Farm, Pastor Larry, and Miss Jan. And that's all for time being. So we have about 9 folks in here. Give little people some time to join in. Still a little early. Nothing really going on here at the moment. Not really. Haven't been into the bees for about a week or two. Kind of let them be because, like I said earlier, not a whole lot I can do right now. At least, out in the bee yard, I don't really do any inspections around this time of year. But we are getting close. Since we're already in 2026, we're already getting really, really close. To spring. It'll be here before you know it because Christmas came, New Year's came, every holiday came this time of year. So, spring will be here before you know it, and got to be ready. So here soon. Already crazy to believe, but I will start, doing some videos talking about spring, preparing for spring. So watch out for those. We'll do some live streams talking about that. This time of the year, whenever there's not a whole lot to talk about, I usually do live streams, kind of teaching and stuff, and it's great. It's fun to do. So other than that, there's nothing really else going on. After my presentation, I'll kind of go through some things, my weather, kind of what's going on, updates from my apiary, my bee yard, some things I'm doing. Kind of talk about my YouTube channel a little bit, which I kind of do every week whenever I do my live streams. So, by the way, if you are checking in right now, just know I will be doing my presentation and I won't be able to really respond to comments, answer questions, or anything like that. But if you do have a question or topics bringing up, anything like that, just put them in the comment section below. And when I'm done with my presentation, I will go back and look at those, questions, those comments, those topics and stuff that you're talking about. You're sharing. So I will go back and look at those because I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just kind of going through my presentations. Same thing every week. So today's topic, as you can see on the title, is talking about things newer beekeepers. Most of you folks who are watching right now are not new beekeepers. So, but still, this is something I hope you'll still tune in, even if you're not a new beekeeper. But if you do know any new beekeepers, feel free to share this to them. If you're at bee clubs, feel free to share this at them. Again, this is not seasonal, so this is we're gonna be talking about any things that new beekeepers worry about. It's not like not guided towards a single season. Spring, summer, winter, anything like that. It's just guided for everything. So of course, newer beekeepers, I've been there before, worry about pretty much everything, a lot of things they worry about. And that is not a bad thing because worrying usually comes from caring, and caring is what keeps people paying attention to their bees. The problem is that not all worries are equal. Some things feel like big problems, but really aren't, while other things don't feel urgent, but matter a lot more than people realize. So this live stream isn't going to be about telling anyone they're worrying for no reason. So don't get that, vibe, because that's not really what I'm trying to talk about. What I'm really trying about is trying to help newer beekeepers sort out which concerns deserves more attention and which ones are just part of learning what normal looks like. Because remember, newer beekeepers don't know what normal beekeeping looks like. You can watch videos, of course. You can on YouTube and other platforms and learn that way. And of course you can, but a lot of things come through hands-on management, and newer beekeepers most times don't have that hands-on management. So, they don't really know what a lot of things are. A lot of weird things look, like they haven't seen it before. Queen cells, they automatically panic and start smashing them without knowing what the reason is. So we'll be talking about all those different things. You kind of get the idea. So of course, let's just kind of talk about, why do new beekeepers worry? New beekeepers worry because they care, and caring without experience is uncomfortable. Most beginners are doing everything they're told to do. They're reading books, watching videos, listening to podcasts, scrolling, through social media, asking questions in forums, and going to bee club meetings. And the problem is that none of those sources fully agree with each other. So, of course, I've talked about a lot about that before, is that, there's no right answer to beekeeping. So, a lot of newer beekeepers kind of get, stranded. They get kind of confused because whenever they ask questions, a lot of people come with different answers. Um, and that I was in that same exact position too. I'm sure you were as well. So instead of clarity, they end up with mental noise. So one person says inspect every week, another says leave them alone, and one says never feed, another says feed aggressively, and so on. A lot of different opinions, and opinions are great. We kind of have opinions. I have my opinions, you have your opinions, and everybody has their own opinions. But for newer beekeepers, it gets kind of overwhelming, should we say. And on top of all that, new beekeepers don't yet have a sense of what normal looks like. Without experience, everything looks extreme. A quiet hive feels dead, a loud hive feels aggressive, spotty brood looks like failure, a booming hive looks out of control. Worry fills the space where experience hasn't had time to develop yet. Excuse me. Let's talk about the number one thing a lot of beekeepers worry about is if I'm opening the hive too much. And this might be probably one of the most common for newer beekeepers, and it usually shows up early. They'll suit up, walk out to the hive, and already feel guilty before the lid even comes off. They've heard that inspections stress bees, disrupts progress, or sets colony back. So they rush, they hesitate, and they second guess every frame to pull. And of course, going into the hive without a purpose, staying too long, opening it during bad weather, or fumbling around aimlessly can cause problems and can stress the bees. But avoiding inspections altogether creates a bigger issue. You don't know what's happening inside your hive. So early on, inspections are how you learn what healthy looks like. You learn brood patterns, you learn population growth, you learn how quickly resources come and go, and that knowledge only comes from looking. You can learn a lot of knowledge on YouTube. You can learn a lot of knowledge on forums at bee clubs. But one of the biggest things that teaches new beekeepers is hands-on experience, and therefore is inspecting their colonies, getting hands-on and learning. And that's really how for me at least, that's kind of how I really learned. I learned off of YouTube and stuff like that, and I did watch a lot of videos and stuff like that. But I honestly, I remember before, whenever I was a newer beekeeper, I really didn't know what I was really doing. But I kind of learned from whenever I was expecting my bees. I kind of knew what brood patterns are, how things worked in the colony. I learned how to feed, the amount to feed, and that type of stuff right there. When we're talking about feeding, amount to feed, what times to feed comes from your area. I've talked about a lot about that before. A lot of stuff depends on your climate, and newer beekeepers just gonna have to learn their climate because not every climate is the same. So that's number one is opening the hive too much. And look, number one, you don't want to open your hive too much. If you're a new beekeeper, don't say I'm telling you that you need to inspect your colony every couple of days. That's not what you need to do. That's unneeded. You want to inspect your colonies enough, but you don't want to overdo it. You want to I've talked a lot about it before. You've heard this saying before: intentional beekeeping. You need to be intentional. You need to be inspecting your bees for the right reason. You don't need to be inspecting your bees just to look at them, unless of course that right whenever I say you don't need to be inspecting your bees just to look at them, the only place where I say that doesn't really come into play, at least whenever I'm kind of saying it, is for newer beekeepers, because that's the big way they learn. So if you're wondering when you should inspect, the times you should inspect, how often you should inspect, I mean, that's just really, personal preference. And that's the thing. A lot of beekeepers have different opinions on that. You can tell me your opinions on when you inspect, like 2 weeks, 1 week. I usually say 1 to 2 weeks, and in the spring, 1 to 2 weeks is right around the sweet spot. 2 weeks is good as, 1 to 2 is the sweet spot. Because the main reason why I say that is because if you inspect one day and you don't see any queen cells, within 2 weeks, you come back, and if you see some swarm cells, you'll be able to take care of that problem. Yeah, and time frames, that's important too. But anyway, let's go and get to the next one, or we'll be here all day. Number two, I'm disturbing the brood nest. The brood nest is, one of the most important part of the colonies. It's where the queen's at. A lot of newer beekeepers are afraid to inspect that part because that's where the queen's at and don't want to risk killing the queen. Um, New beekeepers worry that pulling brood frames apart, moving them slightly, or exposing the brood for even for a short time will, somehow hurt the colony because they're new, and you may be worrying, thinking, "Come on, that's not nothing," because we're experienced beekeepers. We kind of know what's going on. We know the basic stuff, but a lot of new beekeepers don't. So that I guess you could call it fear or stress or whatever you want to call it, a worry or anything, um, often leads to rush inspections or skipped inspections altogether. And just to kind of put an example here, there's been multiple times where I was kind of a newer beekeeper. When I started to inspect my bees, I kind of started, let's just say, in the supers, kind of looking at honey. Then I got into the brood nest, and then I kind of got kind of weary about it because I didn't want to accidentally kill bees, kill brood, or excuse me, kill the queen. Didn't want to disturb the bees, so I would just walk away and put everything back. And whenever new beekeepers do that, I did that a lot before when I was a newer beekeeper. When you do that, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff. Whether it be swarm cells, brood patterns, and stuff like that. So what actually matters is how long the brood is exposed, what the temperature is, and how intentional you are. Calm, efficient inspections do far less harm than nervous, rushed ones. All right, so number 3 is I might be feeding wrong. So this is where we kind of get into feeding. I've talked a lot about feeding and stuff like that, and there's really no right way to feed. You can do there's a lot of different methods to feed. Whether we be talking about the methods to feed, like entrance feeders, frame feeders, bucket feeders, stuff like that. And then you'll get to when you should feed, when you should switch to candy boards, when you should take your sugar syrup off, stuff like basic stuff like that we kind of talk about. So you may be wondering, why do beekeepers worry about feeding? So a lot of times beekeepers, newer beekeepers, kind of worry about overfeeding or underfeeding, pressure to avoid, feeding altogether, feeding misunderstood as failure, and colony needs change constantly. Of course, because whenever I put on my feed, in spring sugar syrup, they drink down pretty fast. So I kind of want to talk about timing for feeding, because a lot of newer beekeepers, kind of wary of that. When you should feed, and that really depends on your climate, your temperatures. I always say whenever it's kind of cold, under 65 degrees, if your temperatures really get under 50 degrees, real cold, 50, 40, where they are clustered, because at that temperature they are clustered, you don't want to be feeding sugar syrup. You want to take that sugar syrup off in winter. In winter, you don't want to be feeding sugar syrup. I mean, anywhere you're at, even down here in Alabama, we have a lot of warm days where we can get up to 65 degrees, 70 degrees. That does not mean you need to be feeding sugar syrup, of course, because the temperatures can go down real quick. So just stick with hard candy, candy boards in this time of the year, and then once it gets a little bit more consistently in warmer temperatures, and you can start feeding sugar syrup. And usually down here in Alabama, I usually start feeding sugar syrup probably late February, early March. Now for beekeepers up north, it might be more like late March, April, sometimes even May for them. It's crazy how different our temperatures are, how our climate is compared to some others up north, and I'm sure a lot of y'all can tell me what y'all's climate is and what you experience. So you kind of can get the idea. The main thing I kind of mentioned earlier was there's a lot of different ways to feed. There's a lot of different things that go into it. And then whenever newer beekeepers start asking questions and stuff, a lot of people, start giving them different answers. So what answer do you take? Which answer do you use? That's what a lot of newer beekeepers ask whenever all these, 5 people, if one person, a newer beekeeper might ask a question, about feeding, and then all these other beekeepers are all probably gonna have a different answer for them. So they are always stuck wondering, which one do I use? Which one should I follow? And if you're wanting advice, I think you probably should take advice from beekeepers in your climate. So if you have any near beekeepers who are in your area, I would recommend reaching out to those, because they kind of understand their climate. They know kind of what's going on in their area, and they can probably give you advice that would work better, at least for your location, than somebody who's up north or who's in a different climate than you. That's just my opinion. For all of these, that's what I would advise to newer beekeepers. Number 4, my queen isn't good enough. So like spotty brood patterns and stuff like that. Newer beekeepers are harder on queens than a lot of us, more experienced ones. And you may be wondering, why is that? Well, it's because they don't know what a good queen usually looks like. A lot of times they think that a little spotty, like a couple spots in the middle of a brood pattern, a little bit of a spotty brood pattern, just means that's bad. That means that she needs to go. So, also that's another thing where they don't have a whole lot of experience. So, that's just something that just occurs, So like, one uneven brood pattern, one slow week, or one inspection without visible eggs can cause immediate panic. People start questioning genetics, requeening, or assuming something is wrong. But queens aren't machines. They respond to nectar flows, weather, colony size, available space, and seasonal changes. A single inspection doesn't define queen quality. Experienced beekeepers learn to look for trends over time, not snapshots. Is brood increasing week to week? Is population building? And is the colony functioning? Is the colony functioning? Perfection really isn't the goal. It's progress is the goal. We want to see our colonies progress. And then we kind of get into the part where, how do you know if your queen's not good? How do you know if you need to kill your queen and replace her? And that's another one where a lot of people give them different answers. Of course, number 1 is spotty brood patterns. And if the brood pattern, I have to give you a picture. I can't, I don't have a picture on here. I maybe should have put a picture on here. But if it just looks real spotty, then that might be a sign of maybe your queen not doing well. But you just can't take that just into factor. You also have to take into factor, of course, your nectar flow. If you don't have a good nectar flow, if your nectar flow is, not really good, not sufficient, then that's probably a big reason why your queen isn't doing so well. You also might be it could be colony size, could be space, seasonal changes, all those different things really play a factor into kind of what your brood patterns look like. But also at the same time, as also another thing that you can look at, what is, you can, if you think that your queen is not doing well, you can replace her, kill her and replace her. But what I've done for the past couple of years, or at least this year and last year, and the year before that, I really didn't replace my queens. I don't. A lot of beekeepers, requeen every year, and the reason why they do that is to avoid every year going into winter, maybe having a bad queen and losing her, right? You can kind of, that's the reason why they requeen every year. And a lot of y'all probably requeen every year. I don't. It's just kind of something, I just don't do that. I leave the queens be, because I believe that the bees will replace her when they need to. I actually had a queen recently, just kind of an example for you new beekeepers. I recently had a colony that had a queen, an old queen. It was a pretty old queen. It was like 3 years old at the time. It was this year, the 2025, or not, excuse me, it's not this year. It's last year. Man, I keep on getting confused with these years. Last year in 2025, I had a colony that had a pretty old queen. The brood pattern, it was okay. It wasn't really the best. I looked at that brood pattern and I noticed that it really wasn't that good. I didn't kill her right away because I was going to let the bees do it, and they did. Right whenever I saw a little bit of a fall off, of the queen. Now the brood pattern was honestly fine. It was good enough to deal with. It really wasn't that bad. But the bees, they replaced her, superseded her. If you don't know what that means, it means whenever the queen isn't doing well, when the queen is failing, aging, pheromones are put out. The bees can receive pheromones from the queen and can tell if she's aging, if she's failing, if she's not able to lay efficiently, then they'll replace her, supersede her. And they did that, and everything went great. So that's what I've done. I've just kind of let the bees kind of replace her when the time's right, and they'll do that. But anyway, it just really depends on, if you want to replace your queen every year, that's a good thing to do. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, because it's a good thing to do. Especially for, larger beekeepers. I think that's a big thing for larger beekeepers, is that is important to do that, because for me, I can kind of overlook my colonies because I only have 13. Some of these beekeepers can't really because they're large. But anyway, that's really kind of what that's about. That's what I do. I don't, replace my queen every year. I do look at the brood patterns. I make sure she looks okay. If I see that the queen is not really good, because I have replaced queens before, it just depends on the situation. It really depends on the context. It really depends on the situation, really. All right, number 5 is that timing. We're kind of talking about timing here. The calendar, missing the perfect time to do splits, to do different things, right? So calendars, and when we're talking about calendars, we're talking about when to do things, when to feed, when to do splits, when to make decisions with your bees, if you want to expand or not. Stress new beekeepers out more than almost anything else. And you may wonder why. Well, people see dates attached to actions and assume those dates are hard deadlines. And they think that if they miss it, the season is ruined. But bees, as we all know, don't read calendars. I mean, they really don't. Colonies develop at different speeds. Weather changes everything. Nectar flows, don't follow charts, because I've had a lot of nectar flows before do well. That's followed what I would say a chart. A lot of times they don't. A lot of times Mother Nature has a different plan. The idea of perfect timing is great, but it's really real. So you have to work with Mother Nature. You have to work with the nectar flow. You have to work with spring. You got to fit everything in with kind of what your nectar flow is doing. So I'm going to try to give an example here for this as well. I just thought of one. I just kind of forgot it for a second, but that's right, 2023. I've talked about it a lot before. I've kind of talked about I've talked about it a lot, and y'all might be bored of it, but it's still a good reference for this. 2023 was a really weird year, and it just really didn't follow the chart. It didn't really follow what it usually does. And if you're wondering what does it usually do down here, usually we get the privet. Privet's one of our biggest nectar flows. Comes in around March, goes to about April, early April, and then it starts to die off around that time. And then we usually around April we'll get our tallow, and then whenever our tallow comes in, it will last around till late May, early June, and then that's when our dearth hits. So that's usually how everything works. But in 2023, it's not really that the nectar flow, just didn't start at the time it usually starts. It's that we got some weird weather around that time, which kind of forced everything to kind of not really work. We got like we had a cold snap. I think, when was it? I think it was in March. I think is right whenever our privet, everything was starting to bloom, all the flowers, all the nectar flows. And right when I noticed, everything was going great up to that point. But right whenever that cold snap hit, it kind of killed. It got pretty cold. I think it got down to about 32 degrees, maybe a little lower than that at about March. Might have been April. I just can't really remember. I honestly can't remember. But it came around that time, and then it just kind of killed everything, and it never really recovered that year. It just kind of, everything was out of whack, out of sorts. So it just never recovered. Had a lot of problems with a couple problems with robbing, but really problems with small hive beetles because of how bad the turf was, and the beetles were just everywhere. This year and last year, when we had a good flow and that weather stuff didn't really affect anything, it really worked out great and didn't have any problems. This year I didn't have any problems really. Everything went great. So not everything's gonna go perfect. Not everything's gonna be ideal. So you just kind of have to work with Mother Nature. I mean, that's kind of really what you have to do. And I've talked a lot about before, but we're not gonna. I guess we'll go ahead and get to the next one real quick. All right, so this is a big one right here because I remember I used to kind of go through this. Is that every weird thing means there's a problem, means there's trouble. Bees, do different things that a lot of beekeepers would think are weird things. Bearding, loud buzzing, which a lot of times are drones, sudden drone production, clustering, odd flight behavior, and all of it can look alarming if you've never seen it before. This right here creates the illusion that every odd behavior is a crisis. Really, with this is context matters. Patterns matter, and one observation doesn't tell you much. Repeated signs over time is what tells you something. So normal bee behavior, like we all know it. For newer beekeepers, like I said, they don't really know what it is. It looks alarming to them. Like I said, bearding is really one of the most things that new beekeepers really worry about. And you all know that too, bearding. A lot of people confuse bearding with swarming. They see these bees outside of the box hanging everywhere. They're like, what are these bees doing? Is everything okay? And something must be wrong, right? This doesn't look natural. It looks like they must be swarming. And everybody thinks it's swarming, and a lot of beekeepers think that, but it's actually not the case. It's just a natural thing bees do. I probably don't have to explain what bearding is. Everybody knows it. But if you're a new beekeeper, bearding is basically when the hive gets pretty hot inside the hive in summer, maybe late spring, whenever the temperatures are heating up. You will see bearding a lot because a lot of times it's hot in the hive, and there's really them taking a lot of these hot bodies that are fanning their wings, bring them out and take all those hot bodies out and cool the hive down somewhat. Yep. And context matters. I mean, context matters in everything, really. All right, so number 7 is if I make a mistake, I'll kill them. It's the fear, I guess, worrying about making a mistake because, everybody's made a mistake before. I've made a mistake. You made a mistake. This is something that every beekeeper worries about. They don't want to make a mistake. The idea that one wrong move will wipe out the colony creates hesitation, second guessing, and sometimes complete inaction. So, most colonies, don't, fail because of one mistake. They fail because of a combination of timing, stress, research, shortages, and sometimes things completely outside the beekeeper's control. And you maybe wonder, what are those things that are outside the beekeeper's control? Well, there's a lot of things beekeepers can prevent. You can prevent starvation. You can prevent. You can prevent. Dead outs and stuff like that. You just got to feed. And we mentioned it earlier before too. A couple live streams ago, that this time of year, there's not really a whole lot you can do whenever there's a problem. Like if you lose a queen, if it's something like that. It's just you can't raise a new queen this time of year, so it's just nothing you can do. I actually experienced that last year. I had a queen that died in the middle of winter, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't buy a new queen because there's no queens out there. Couldn't raise a new queen. Why? Because there was no drones. Would have failed. would have been a waste of time. So I just kind of let them kind of die out. And as unfortunate as that sounds for newer beekeepers, sometimes that is what you have to do, because um, nobody likes to dead out, but whenever you have those type of things where a queen fails during winter, which a lot of them do, they're not always due to us, to beekeepers failing or doing something wrong. It's just natural, and that's the thing. A lot of reason, a lot of these things that are out of the beekeeper's control is natural things. Sometimes queens die of natural age, and plenty of other things too. Natural stuff, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So that's just kind of an example. Because last year I had a colony, that lost a queen in the middle of winter, and I just wasn't really able to save him. But what I was able to do, and if you lose a colony, of course it's bad. You don't need to dwell on it, because that just makes it worse if you just dwell over it, because it you just sometimes just have to move on. But you do need to kind of take into consideration kind of what might have gone wrong, what you might have thought gone wrong, and you can learn from that experience. But what you can do with those frames is save them, because whenever you have dead outs, you'll have some drawn out comb, and that really does help you out for spring. So you can find a little positive out of it. All right, so you may be wondering what actually deserves worrying about. Not everything deserves equal concern. Population trends matter, food stores matter, seasonal timings matter, pests and diseases. Pressure matters. These are slow moving structural issues. One odd frame doesn't matter nearly as much as a declining population over weeks. And, also, one strange behavior doesn't matter as much as persistent patterns. Learning what to worry about and what not to is the turning point in beekeeping. All right, so let's kind of talk about this for a second, because it's really important. I know what all this live stream long, I've talked a lot about experience. How being experienced really does help you. It really does help. Because you've learned a lot of things. You've learned mistakes. You've learned right things, wrong things for your area. You've learned your climate. You've learned your area, your nectar flows, all etc. Everything, all of the above. But over time, worry. I don't know, fear, worry, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't disappear. It just becomes more focused. You stop reacting. We've talked about it before. Proactive versus reactive beekeeping. What's the difference? Well, proactive is preventing a problem before it happens. Reacting to a problem is reacting to it whenever it happens. And that's what more experienced beekeepers, are able to do. Now, of course, I still worry about some stuff here and there. I still want to keep my bees alive. I do everything I can to keep my bees alive. And it's not to say you don't want to worry, because of course, you don't want to worry, but you do want to do everything you can to keep your bees alive, of course. But just kind of talking about, don't overthink these things too much. But anyway, you start reacting to every small change. You start recognizing patterns, and you also open hives, with intention, with intentions, intentional beekeeping, without fear, without going into the colony with, being unintentional, right? Confidence, in beekeeper, everybody, may wonder where you can get confidence from. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything, because I don't know everything. I'm sure I don't know everything. There's a lot of beekeepers who know a whole lot more than I do. I just try to, teach what I know, kind of, things that I've learned from my beekeeping career, and kind of share it with you. Maybe you can use it. Maybe you might not want to use it. You might be in a different climate. But it comes from understanding that you can respond when something really does go wrong. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Now, again, this live stream isn't over yet. This is just kind of the end of the presentation. Give me a second real quick. Looks like we have 22 people on. Oh, excuse me. Give me a second. There we go. Maybe not press the wrong button. There we go. We got 22 people on here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. Sometimes I worry about Philip forgetting me when he becomes famous. That's a real legitimate worry. Excuse me, Brian. Yeah, Brian, that's a legitimate worry. We don't want Philip forgetting about us. But thanks for checking in, Brian, Philip, Randy, Tar Heel Beekeeper. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. This has been a good topic, kind of talk about. Now again, like I kind of talked about, this isn't really something that is trying to tell you not to worry about anything. Just kind of not overthink things, right? Ian Momberger, thanks for checking in. A new name, thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. How many people are going to the North American Bee Expo? Well, I won't be going this year. I actually had somebody ask me that on like another live stream, but hopefully, we were thinking about going this year, but it got kind of late, so we kind of decided that we're not going to go this year, but most likely going to go next year. So that's kind of the idea there. But I hope everybody who's going, hope everybody has a good time. Brian's going. Keith is. Randy's going. Next time on my live stream, let everybody know how it is. I'm sure it should be great because they always have good stuff up there, and always good fellowship, different stuff. I actually went to the Hive Live the last one they did. I think it was the last one they did. The last one they did, and it was fun. So I'm sure it's somewhat similar, but I'm sure it's as much fun or even more. A lot of comments. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. Also, by the way, make sure to click the thumbs up button on your way in, or if you're on your way out, if you have something to do. I greatly appreciate it if you click the thumbs up button. It always helps me out a lot. Hey, Brian Bennett, thanks for checking in. A long-term viewer, been here for a while. A great supporter. I greatly appreciate you checking in. All right. Hope you're all doing well. Happy 2026. Happy 2026 to everybody else. I hope everybody had a great Happy New Year. A great upcoming year for everybody. Gonna probably this upcoming week, this next week, whenever I do my live stream, I'm probably gonna start prepping videos and live streams kind of whenever I'm doing these teaching live streams, whenever I do my presentations. Gonna maybe soon start getting towards spring, talking about this upcoming year. Getting close before we know it, at least for me, because honestly in February, late February is really when things get going down here. Sometimes I worry about early spring starvation. Yep, that is a concern that's big for everybody. That's the big thing for me is actually, when did I talk about it? Maybe last week or the week before. Well, I didn't do my live stream last week, but the last live stream or the one before kind of talked about the time where your bees are most likely going to starve is not really the cold part of winter. Usually my bees get through the coldest part of winter fine. It's early spring is whenever a lot of times my bees tend to starve. It's when I find. So that's something you just kind of got to watch out for, because usually early on you don't have as good of a flow. All right, I'm going through the comments real quick, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. Texas Beekeeper, hey Blaine, thanks for checking in. I greatly appreciate it. Philip, RTX Honeybees, thanks for checking in as well. Gary, hey y'all, thanks for checking in. I greatly appreciate it. Checking in. Do queens stop laying during winter? I just checked the hive, good population, but no eggs or brood. That that's a good question for this live stream. That's also one I kind of talked about. If y'all were watching during the presentation, I talked a lot about questions. Whenever you ask things, really depend on where you live. It depends on your temperatures, and this question, no different. It depends on where you live. It depends on your climate. So do queens stop laying during winter? A lot of them do up north. Y'all let anybody in the comments, you can kind of mention kind of what you see if your queens lay or not. My bees usually do. I usually have brood. My bees rear brood in winter. The reason why is because we have all these up and down temperatures, warm temperatures, and the bees start raising brood. So therefore, I've talked about it before. Up and down temperatures. That was actually my recent video. Inconsistent temperatures, you can kill your bees. Whenever you have those up and down temperatures, when you get warm, the bees will, raise brood, and that's what happens to me down here in Alabama. So you just gotta watch out, of course. But it depends on where you live. As long as they have good population, they look healthy, they should be good. Now, whenever you say I just checked the hive, if you did an inspection, if you didn't see no eggs or brood, if you saw the queen in there, still that would be a good sign to see. So it just depends. It just depends, really. But my queens, they lay during winter. But I haven't inspected any bees this year, so I really couldn't tell you, right now. But from past winters, I know they do raise brood. This year, I just decided not to do any inspections because I can do inspections, and I very well could, because it gets warm down here. It gets up to 70 degrees. Today was such a wonderful day. It got up to 68 degrees, 65 degrees, somewhere around there. Perfect day. But I just don't really inspect this time of the year. No need to, really, for me. We'll start probably sometime in February, though. Yeah. Brian Phillip is already famous. Yeah. Gary, sorry I missed you last night. Inner was out. No worries. We didn't go live last night after being at the hospital all week with his brother. Lord willing, he'll be back this Sunday. Prayers for y'all. I saw that. Prayers for y'all family. Tim and Hannah. More bees starve during a warm winter than a cold winter. Oh man, you know what, Gary? You are absolutely correct. I talked about that in my recent video. I kind of was going through, I was talking about those warm winters, cold winters. And honestly, for y'all, if y'all are watching, a lot of you northern beekeepers may want our weather down here because it's warm, it's nice. And, you get some warm temperatures, and, you can go outside with shorts on. But I honestly would rather have your temperatures, really. Now, I wouldn't really want to get down into like negatives or anything like that. I don't want anything like that. But just enough where it stays cold for a consistent time. It can get warm every once in a while, but if it stay consistent for a little bit, I would be happy with my bees, because they would not break cluster much unless if it got warm, maybe a day, maybe every couple weeks it gets warm, they'll break cluster, which is good, so we can get out and defecate, fly a little bit, but I'd prefer a colder winter. Not too cold, just something where they would stay clustered, Hello, everyone. Hey, Gigi's Honeybees. Thanks for checking in tonight. Appreciate you. Got up to 30 people tonight. Got 25 on right now. Thank y'all for joining in. I really appreciate it. I mean, I couldn't be here without you guys, and it's always couldn't do it without y'all, because I always appreciate y'all whenever y'all check in and watch the videos and live streams. If you don't know, I do live streams every Monday night at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. I do them almost every Monday night. I've been on a more consistent basis recently, and I really enjoy them. Pastor Larry, Miss Jan, when do the red maples usually bloom in your area? Well, honestly, I can't really tell you. I don't really know exactly, at least in my area. I can tell you, privet and tallow. My privet usually, will bloom in early March, mid-March, and go till about mid-April, and then mid-April is when we get our tallow, and then our tallow ends around early June. Not so sure about the red maples, but I'm not a really big flower person, or like plants. I just know privet, tallow, and our goldenrod. I couldn't. If y'all ask me anything else about flowers, I think this live stream would be super short if I was talking about, like plants and stuff. But you know what, I do need to research more about our flowers that bees like. It really does give beekeepers more better of an understanding and give me a much better understanding, and I'm planning to do that. So, kind of research about our flowers. But, like I said, our main flows will be the tallow and privet in spring, and then the goldenrod in fall. You know what? Last year, 2025, our goldenrod flow last year was pretty good. I mean, I was happy with it. It was better than most years. It pretty much got most of my bees packed full for winter. It really didn't have to feed a whole lot, except for the smaller colonies that were in nukes and all the other ones. A lot of them had supers on, and some of them that didn't just got packed full. I didn't need to feed them anymore. So the fall flow did good. Haven't been out in my bee yard about 2 weeks, so I really do need to go out into my bee yard in the next 2 days, next 3 days, and kind of do some weight checks, put on some excess food if they need to, and get ready for the next cold snap, which we will have a cold snap here pretty soon, I'm sure. I checked my bees for the first time all year on Saturday. That's good. Hope your bees looking good. I know you're in Texas, so I'm sure you have some pretty warm temperatures, like we do. I'll probably will get into my bees in the next month, probably early, mid February, and then start doing inspections. That's usually when I do my inspections. Ours are budding, but we are supposed to be in the 70s this week. Mm-hmm. Well, when we're talking about temperatures, I'll let me see here. All right, so this is the next couple of days. The next week actually. Monday. Today was 65 degrees. Hey, I said 65 degrees, and I was correct. The high today is 65. The low is 52 tonight, so it'll get down to 52. Not bad at all. Bees will they won't really be clustering. They might, not really that much. You know what? I've talked about it before. I noticed when we get into the 40s and the low 50s, they kind of cluster, but they kind of don't. It's just really not that compact. But the colder it gets, they are more compact. Tomorrow, supposed to get up to 73. Low's going to be 59. Wednesday, the low's going to be 60 degrees. The high's going to be 76. The high on Thursday is going to be 76. The low's going to be 59. So pretty decent temperatures, at least for us. I mean, the next cold snap will be here pretty soon. I think this weekend's supposed to get somewhat chilly. Friday is supposed to get up to 78 degrees. Saturday is supposed to be 77. All right, so look at this. This is just Alabama temperatures. It's just really like classic southern temperatures. Alabama temperatures is one day you have 77 degrees, and then it gets down to 57 degrees. That's a 20-degree drop. Pretty significant. And the low on Saturday is going to be 46, and then the low on Sunday will be 32, low on Monday will be 33, the bees will be clustered at that temperature. So as you can see, the problem we've had with these warm up and down temperatures, it will get cold again, and the bees could run with this warm temperatures. Bees will be flying. I saw bees flying today, by the way. But whenever we get into those cold temperatures, they're burning energy right here. And then whenever you get to those colder temperatures, they might not have enough, to get through those little colder snaps. I know my bees are good, but that's why I said tomorrow or Wednesday, I'm going to get out to the bee yard and just do some weight checks, make sure everybody's good. I know my colonies with the supers on, with the excess boxes with a lot of honey in it, they're good. We have those boxes, and they also have the bottom boxes as well, in their brood nest. So that's our temperatures. I plan, to keep on feeding them. Like Gary said, if they can fly, feed. You're correct. That's correct. -7 degrees, got up to 12. Wow. Not when I say I want some cold temperatures to stay consistent, I really don't want that right there. That's a little bit too cold. We need some heat. It's tempting to get in them, but don't want to bust a seal until February. Visually, they're moving. Yep, this time they're moving right now. They all these up and down temperatures. Same here. I don't really bust the seal into February. Once we get into February, you get a little bit more consistent. But it still gets cold in February, by the way. But it's just usually down here we're able to inspect in February, and we're able to do I know a lot of beekeepers who do splits in February. You know. If y'all will, make sure to click that thumbs up button if you haven't already. I appreciate y'all. We have 23 folks watching, 20 or 26 people watching, and 20 likes. Make sure to click that thumbs up, y'all. That it helps the video out, because whenever the YouTube algorithm likes it, it pushes the live stream out. So if you'll like it, maybe it will help this video get out to more people, maybe newer beekeepers, help them out. Well, we got about 5 minutes left. If I see any final questions, I'll answer them. This live stream went by pretty fast, and I really like today's presentation. Today's live stream went by very fast, and I wasn't here for 30 minutes talking about nothing. I was actually only here for about 15 minutes talking for a little bit, to the chat. So it worked out really good, and I've enjoyed it tonight. So next week, don't know what the topic's going to be. You'll see the live stream pop up eventually, and I'll figure out some type of topic, probably something probably for spring, kind of getting ready, because we're finally in that time of year where we can kind of start talking more about bees. Because when you're in late November, December, and a lot of times early January, you don't have a whole lot to talk about. But once we get more into mid-January, a little bit even early January, we get to kind of talk about this upcoming spring, which is going to be great, for us to have something to talk about. And once we get into spring and, talking about that type of stuff, we're going to have a whole lot more to talk about, which will be even better for, videos and live streams. But, we've been kind of making do, getting through winter. Spring will be here before we know it. So, just kind of prepping up, get ready for that. So, again, thank you all for watching. Great live stream tonight. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And if you will, again, click that thumbs up button on your way out. Don't forget to do it. And if you are watching the replay, if you missed the live stream, no worries. Thank you so much for watching the replay, because it really does. I greatly appreciate it, because you're willing to spend an hour of your time watching me talking about bees, and I appreciate that with y'all watching as well, live. So thank you all so much for watching, and click that thumbs up on your way out, and we will catch y'all next week. I might upload a video, I don't know, but I hope everybody has a great day. Happy New Year, everyone, and we'll see y'all next week. Good night, everyone.